What should you do if you find a tick on you, and what's the best practices for removing it?
First of all, you need to remove ticks as quickly as you can. Don't say, I'm going to go to the doctor tomorrow, and ask the doctor, what is this and what should we do about it? Have on hand special tweezers to remove ticks. And generally, the ones that are recommended, that I recommend, have very long, thin pointers. And what you want to do is get that tick right at its, for lack of a better word, the neck. This would be the body. It's stuck into your skin with these mouth parts. By the way, it has these two spear-like things that go like this, back and forth, in order to break through your skin. And you don't feel it because of the magic of tick saliva. It actually numbs you. It's like an anesthetic. Tick saliva is a real thing. There's actually a paper in the scientific literature called Spectacular Saliva in reference to tick saliva. But it also puts out something like a cement kind of thing that holds the tick firmly in place long enough for it to get its blood meal. And it basically enlarges several hundred times its size during this period. So anyway, you want to get the tick as close to your skin as possible because you don't want to squeeze what might be in the contents of the tick back into you. And basically gently pull up and away. And that's it. Save the tick to show to your doctor. And don't let your doctor say, as many doctors have, I've been told, oh, that's not a deer tick. No Lyme disease, and throws it away. There are many places where you can send that tick to be tested. They're all online. One is at the University of Rhode Island. One is at University of Massachusetts at Amherst. But anyway, carefully remove it. Then you want to go to the doctor if it's engorged. If it's not engorged, if it's only been there a short period of time, you might get different advice from different people. Suffice to say that the risk is lowest the quickest you find it. But when the tick starts to fill up with blood, that means it has had time to embed itself in you, to pass the Borrelia burgdorferi spirochete from its gut and into your bloodstream. And the longer it's there, the worse it is.
Could you sum up everything we've talked about today in 15 seconds?
We have underestimated Lyme disease. We have underestimated the power of ticks. We have not done the hard work to bring this epidemic under control. People need to know that. They need to take precautions. They need to demand action on ticks and on the diseases they are giving us.
What's the one thing I need to do today?
Remind yourself that ticks are out there. When you go outside, when you step foot outside your door, if you live in a Lyme endemic area, and those areas are poorly defined in some places, if you're in New York, certainly, if you're in the Northeast, if you're in the Midwest, you need to be aware. You need to educate yourself. You need to know that there is a risk in nature that wasn't there before.
Why was it important for you to come here to the Real Truth About Health conference and speak?
I'm an investigative reporter. When I began my research on Lyme disease, I began it as the ultimate outsider. I did not have Lyme disease. I did not have chronic Lyme disease. I didn't have anybody in my family who had it. I had a long history of looking into complex social problems. This was really the first medical problem that I looked into. But I had a good reputation as someone who can marshal the facts, who can look at the gamut of information, who was open to being convinced of, somebody's point of view, if it was grounded and if it was supported by data. I had a voice as an investigative reporter. I wrote for a long time, for example, on prisons and the brutal ways in which inmates were housed. The fact that many people with mental illness were in prison wrongly and put under harsh, very harsh confinement called solitary confinement, where many of them self-harmed or even committed suicide. So I had the ability to take complex subjects, to kind of figure them out, and to have a voice, to come to conclusions about them. So that's what I did with Lyme disease. And I think that gives me a certain credibility, having done the hard work, having done it as a journalist, and a journalist with credibility, and having drawn conclusions, having found that we have made mistakes on Lyme disease and on tick control, that we need to do things differently. And I came to this conference because people need to know that. They need information. Information is power.
For people who want to learn more about your work, where should they go?
I have a website called thefirstepidemic.com. You can find lots of information about my book there, about ticks. You can read articles that I've written for Scientific American, for example, for other outlets. There's also a page that I've dedicated to a lawsuit that is pending in federal court in Texarkana, Texas. And it's been filed by about 28 Lyme disease sufferers, people who have really had very serious cases of Lyme disease, and so a couple of whom have died. And it's against 8 insurance companies, now 7, one has settled. It's against 6 of the major researchers who basically came up with the conclusions that we have followed wrongly. It's also against 7 major researchers who have more or less authored the dogma that pervades Lyme disease, that it's easy to diagnose, easy to treat. And it's also against the Infectious Diseases Society of America, the major infectious disease physician society that has written and promulgated the guidelines of Lyme disease. And basically it says that these folks conspired to deny care to patients with Lyme disease, that the insurance companies didn't want to pay for it, that they hired some of these doctors to come up with their own guidelines for reviewing claims, that they themselves in some cases reviewed claims and almost always denied them, that money may have been at the root of this problem, namely to not pay for care for Lyme disease patients. But anyway, this Lyme disease lawsuit has been around for 2 years now. It was filed in 2017. It has not been dismissed or, killed by the judge. So there's every reason to think that something's going to happen on it, that there may be a trial. As I said, one of the insurance companies has settled, though we don't know what for, whether any money was paid, or if so, how much. But if that lawsuit has some success, it could change how Lyme disease is viewed in the medical community. It's a real test of the way we treat Lyme disease. It's not the ultimate test, but it's an interesting development. So anyway, you can look at that on my website, and you can write me through my website. Tell me what you think. Tell me what your questions are. My email address is all over it.